Here we go. We are now live on YouTube, and in 10 seconds,
your show
we
will go
be
live in 5 seconds.
on
4,
Blog Talk Radio.
3, 2, 1.
'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the land Fox News warned its viewers of a dastardly plan. The liberals were launching their war on the season to get rid of Christmas and commit acts of treason, removing decorations out of their sight and telling you that Santa and Jesus ain't white. Environmentalists who'll come right after your soul. They hate all things Christmas, especially the coal. They'll sneak in your house all dressed in their flannel and instead give the bad kids some new solar panels. They'll take up all decorations that please us. They'll even go after tiny baby Jesus. Now all these Fox lies cause such a frustration. Who would save us all from this misinformation? When live from the net there came lots of chatter. Could it be old Saint Nick, or perhaps someone fatter? Broadcasting from New Orleans down in Louisiana, it was none other than Liberal Dan, coming to save the holiday season, busting through their lies with facts, logic, and reason. But I cannot do it myself, he exclaimed, so he called other groups, each one by name. On Christians, on Muslims, on Wiccans, on Jews, on Hindus, on Buddhists, and atheists too. Let's all spread the word and tell them indeed that there's no war on Christmas, just one on greed. So instead of joining this manufactured fight, listen to Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right.
And welcome back to Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left. That's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you from New Orleans, Louisiana. To join the conversation, it's area code 914-803-4131. That is 914-803-4131. If you are listening on blogtalkradio.com, if you're signed up for your free blogtalkradio.com account, you could always join us in the chat room. Go to blogtalkradio.com/liberaldan, sign in with your free account, and go to the episode page and go to the bottom, and you can join us in the chat there. Or if you're watching live on YouTube, you could also join us in that chat as well. And remember, if you're watching live on YouTube, give a like, share the video with your friends, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening after the live broadcast, you can always leave your comments, questions, concerns, etc. over on the show thread at liberaldan.com, facebook.com/liberaldan, or at Liberal Dan Radio on Twitter, or in the comment section again here on YouTube as well. We are been a little busy this past weeks or so getting ready for the holidays with my son's birthday. I now am a father of a teenager, so I now feel old. I was not expecting just, like, teenager. And of course, as soon as he hits teenager, he starts getting more angsty or moody or whatever. But, it is. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. It's not my job.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Donald, for helping me out. That's the only science I guess you get. We're not going to be doing headlines this week. There is a bunch of stuff to talk about. Wow. I mean, I was very tempted to make Madison Cawthorn this week's Hypocrite of the Week because Mr. Family Values and all that other junk is getting a divorce from his wife. Imagine that, Madison Cawthorn. I don't know how much luck he'll have in the courtroom when it comes to determining, the divorce settlement. He might make some arguments, but he might not have any legs to stand on. Anyway. And you know what? He's an ugly person and he's a Nazi, so I don't give a crap. I will make those jokes because he is a Nazi and I don't give a crap. Did not see that coming. Did you not see that coming? I did not see that coming. There's a tweet about it. Dear Mrs. Cawthorn, when I said until death do us part, I was kidding. I want a divorce in Jesus' name. Amen. Hilarious. Ugh. Anyway, so we got the Omicron variant bearing down on America, on the rest of the world as well. Some say it's just as harmful as Delta. Some say it's less harmful than Delta. But here's the thing. And this is one of the things that, especially conservatives, a lot of conservatives don't get this one. Some might. That's fine if you do. Good on you for understanding this. You know, the conservatives who don't understand this, when the pandemic is over, I want to play poker with you, because y'all don't seem to understand odds. All right. So let's say you had a choice, and the choice was you could have. Let's say the Delta variant had a certain amount of infectiousness, and a certain amount of a certain rate of death involved with that variant. All right, whatever those numbers might be. Now, let's say Omicron was, I don't know if it is, but let's say Omicron is 3 times as contagious, it spread 3 times as fast, or as easy, or whatever. And it's only half as deadly. Which would you rather? As an individual, you might want the Omicron variant because it's less deadly if you catch it. But if it's half as deadly, but it spreads 3 times as fast and 3 times as contagious, well, that means that even though you have half the deaths per case, you're having 3 times the cases, which means your deaths are going to go up by 50%. Do you understand that, conservatives? Do you understand what that means? I don't think you do. I don't think you quite understand those concepts. So, and then of course you have the people, and then even if you do catch it, you know, if it spreads more easily, you're giving it more vectors of transmission, and you're giving it more opportunities to mutate, which could create a worse virus. And conservatives seem to be under the false impression that mutation can't happen in a way that makes something more deadly, because that's absolutely not true. It can happen that way. Now, is it beneficial for a virus? If a virus was a, thing that had a mind and could control itself in how it spreads across the planet, would one want to make it so deadly that it kills off the host and no longer has the opportunity to spread? Clearly not. But before it happens, before it dies out, if it gets deadlier, it could kill more people before it dies. So that's the thing. But they seem to have no problem. They'd probably be happy with it. Oh, well, let's let it become more deadly so it kills off just the last people, and boom, and then we don't have it anymore. But there's so many variants. I'm sure there's more variants that we don't know about right now because, again, people are being stupid by doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I mean, come on. Anyway, so that's one thing to be discussed today is the idiocy of conservatives on COVID. But I do have a couple of bits to play this week. Because last week was my son's birthday, I decided to not do a podcast and instead spend time with my family, as one would do. Which means you didn't get a Hypocrite of the Week last week. But far be it from me to let y'all miss a Hypocrite of the Week. So, y'all get 2. Y'all get last week's and this week's. So let's go ahead and play last week's Hypocrite of the Week first, and we'll go from there.
Last week's Hypocrite of the Week was Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who asked for aid after the tornado decimated part of his state. Rand Paul voted against disaster aid for Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Puerto Rico, and California. Aid for me but not for thee is a recipe of hypocrisy. To see who next week's Hypocrite of the Week will be, tune in to Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left, that's right, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central on blogtalkradio.com/liberaldan.
And there you go. The tornado was terrible, terrifying. There are lots of things to discuss about the tornado. I mean, There were people who were told that they would not be able to leave or else they might lose their jobs if they left their work for the tornado, and then they died. I mean, this is one of the problems with capitalism. Now, you might say, well, you know, I don't want to not do capitalism, but, you know, unregulated capitalism is a problem. And look, you know, if you're like a company like Amazon selling all sorts of widgets or all sorts of things that are, you know, might not be necessities, you know, I don't necessarily think that you need purely, you know, for that to be purely socialistic either. But you need to have it in such a way that there are regulations that would prevent what happened with the tornado. If you're going to be in a area that's prone to getting more tornadoes, you need to be able to make sure that your buildings have enough protection for the people that might be in there, and you need to also allow the people to get the hell out if they can't. If it seems like it's going to be deadly, let them go. Let them seek safety. You're as a business person, your number one priority should be the safety and protection of your workers, and not the bottom line. But some of these people, they just don't care. Managers, business owners, whatever, they more care about the bottom line, the culture of the people who run these businesses care more about the bottom line than they do about the the lives and the safety of the people who work for them. And that's a sad state of affairs. Now, I mean, this has been par for the course, you know, for years, you know, people going deep down in the coal mines and, you know, dying of black lung, and people, you know, working in dangerous conditions and not having, you know, proper safety measures, you know, because making a buck is more important than the safety of the people who work for you. And they'll always try and find a way around it. Look at the McConnell oil well explosion, Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of Mexico. They cut corners. They didn't want to put in a $500,000 part. Killed 11 people. Destroyed the livelihood of many Louisiana and other Gulf fishermen because the oil was just permeating through the Gulf, making it so that, you know, the environment becomes more toxic. But no, you know, these people like Senator Joe Manchin, and we're going to go there, want to protect the big energy companies who have no problem, again, with working people and making them sick and causing communities to be sick. And part of the Build Back Better plan helps eliminate some of this pollution that was there. It helps clean up towns that have been affected by it, helps prevent future harm, and trains people to maybe go into other businesses when it comes to, you know, if we move away from coal, it trains them to work in other industries, perhaps greener electricity, greener energy type industries. And the union that's in charge of, I guess, the union over like the coalfield workers wants the bill passed. They want their workers to be able to get money to be able to train for other fields, so that when coal goes away, that their employees are going to be able to be well trained to be able to handle these new jobs that are going to be coming their way. But no, Joe Manchin is standing firm against it. And, you know, it's gotten to the point where people like myself will be like, well, what is it that Joe Manchin has? Hey, Daily News, what is it that Joe Manchin, where does he hang his hat as a Democrat? Like, what policy issue does Joe Manchin hang his hat on to be able to say, oh, yes, I am a Democrat? I can't find any. Now, does that mean I want him to not be a Democrat? No, because I like being able to say Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell when I do my Hypocrites of the Week, when he is the Hypocrite of the Week. More on that in a little bit. I see you on the line, caller. I will. Oh, they have a new It's a new hand raise graphic on Blog Talk Radio. It's a much bigger hand. Looks like a zombie reaching up from the ground, like, ah. So that's hilarious. Anyway, but we have a caller. We'll get to you in a second, I promise. But yeah, I mean, I don't want him to become a Republican. I don't want to allow Senate Minority Leader, I'm sorry, I should say it, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. I don't want him to be Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell again. I want him to be Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Especially if there's a situation that would require Biden to have to replace a Supreme Court justice before the end of this term. But I still want to know, where does he hang his hat? How does he say, you know, I'm a Democrat and this is why? I would love to hear it. I'd love to understand why. I'd love to know, because you're not supporting working people. The working people in your state support this bill. West Virginia support many of the measures in this bill like 2-1. But he won't do it. And people's like, oh, well, you can't be hard on Joe Manchin because that might just cause him to leave. No, I'm going to be hard on Joe Manchin because Joe Manchin's being selfish. Look, I understand the idea of you are like the 50th vote and using that leverage, using that power to leverage, you know, the bill and say, look, well, I want this too, or let's remove this from the bill because I don't think that will be palatable to the people in my state. But he's not even doing that. He said, I want it to be this number, and they gave him that number. He's like, well, I don't want these things. So he's just dancing around. Come up with something that the people in the Democratic Party are going to support, from all sides, the progressives, the pragmatic progressives, the liberals, the moderates, and the conservatives like you, Joe Manchin. Come up with something that's going to be able to pass. Because one thing that you're not going to be able to do when 2022 comes around and you don't allow Biden to have some wins is you're not going to be able to call yourself, you know, not going to be able to chair a committee. You're not going to be able to do anything because you'll be in the minority party again, because you're not allowing Joe Biden to be able to implement the things that he campaigned on, which allowed him to get the presidency, which allowed Warnock and Ossoff to win in Georgia, to be able to have the Democrats retake the Senate, which, if you would have asked me, now I would have never expected that to happen, but it did. And now you're wasting your party. Daily News says, Dan, Germany turns back to dirty coal and natural gas as millions of its solar panels are blanketed in Minnesota. Look, you need a hybrid type of a system. Especially as you, it's not like we're going to shut off coal and we're going to turn on solar panels and that's the end of it. But we need to start moving in the direction of cleaner energy if we don't want to see more and more hurricanes every year, if we don't want to see more and more, you know, environmental issues every year, if we don't want to pollute our waters and our air. Let's go to our caller who is on the line, who has been holding for about 4 minutes. I appreciate you. Caller, where are you from?
New Jersey.
Hey, how's it going today?
I'm hanging in there.
Well, thank you for calling. What have you got to say today?
Okay, well, it's going to be an awkward call probably for you. I don't know. I haven't listened to the show before.
Okay, well,
but good.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm waiting for the awkwardness. I mean, I accept calls from both sides of the aisles, or all the different sides. So I welcome people who disagree. So, but I'll just let's hear it, and we'll see how awkward it is.
I'm usually considered a conservative.
Okay.
A Trumper, if they will. Mostly libertarian, trying to find the actual middle of the aisle where this country needs to exist.
Sure.
I understand everybody's pissed at Joe Manchin because he's the most moderate Democrat there is.
Is he moderate or is he conservative?
No, he's not welcome in the Conservative Party.
Okay, why is that? I would like to hear. Like, I'm trying to figure out why he's a Democrat. So if he's not conservative, I'd like to know why.
Well, no, he's only worried about big business and big money.
Okay.
I could care less about that guy as a pretty much 99%. I'm a libertarian myself. or what they call an anarcho-capitalist.
Okay.
So I do believe in capitalism. I do believe in anarchy too, as well. So that's a good duo that I got going on there.
That's fair enough. I mean, I understand that happens. I mean, I know there are people who are like that, so it's cool. You know, I'm questioning how I would love to have, I could potentially have a show where we could discuss where you see the benefits of anarcho-capitalism would be and where I might be concerned about it. But, you know, but you have more on Manchin,
Yeah,
or
I know what Manchin's doing, because he's doing the same things that they're doing in our party. And, you know, according to everybody, like I said, I'm a Republican. I'm
Right.
really not.
Okay.
I'm a libertarian.
Okay.
But because I backed Trump in the second election, not in the first one. I backed him in the second election because I saw how good the economy was working. I enjoyed it a lot. I like guys like DeSantis. I like people that are stepping up and being a little ballsy. I don't like the Rhinos, you know, the Mitch McConnells and the, you know, especially, you know, Cheney, you know, they're all awful.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Like I don't hear of many people who are like no for Trump in 2016 and yes for Trump in 2020. Like a lot of I've heard of more people who were yes for Trump in 2016 and no for Trump for 2020 because they thought, okay, I made a mistake. But like, you know,
I went the opposite way. I like the way the economy was going. I like how my stocks were turning out. I liked my gas prices. I liked the cost of living. I thought it was going very well.
But you know, one of the reasons that the gas prices went down, especially towards the end of his presidency, was because of the fact that people were staying home more and using less gas because of the pandemic, right?
No, they were way lower before the pandemic, dude. And I know because I've taken, you know, I've driven down before the pandemic. I drove down to DC to go have a one-off with a couple of communists.
Okay. You didn't happen to go drive down to DC again on January 6th, huh?
No.
Okay, just checking.
No, I was in a hotel 2.2 miles away.
Ah, nice.
And I have proof. The feds will even get. Show you the paperwork.
Nice. Well, there you go.
Yeah, they came and picked me up and they were like, "Oh, we found you in D.C. by your phone," and I was like, "Yeah, it was 2 miles away." Stop it.
All right. But I'm interested in the idea of when people say that Mitch McConnell is a rhino. So what makes Mitch McConnell a rhino? Like,
his voting history mostly.
Okay, so
him backing up idiots is a problem.
I mean, there are idiots on both sides. I mean, I mean,
well, exactly. I have problems on both sides.
Well, there's. I mean, if somebody backed I forget the guy's name, but there was the guy that was worried about Guam flipping over or something. Like, and he was a Democrat. I wouldn't call somebody a dino because they backed that guy. You know, yeah, he's an idiot, but I don't think that, you know, that disqualifies one as being a Democrat. Like, I think Manchin's a dino.
Yeah, well, as being a libertarian, these aren't a member of my party either. So
sure.
I just don't like any. I'll be honest with you. I don't like politicians, especially political parties that have been completely backed by awful organizations and awful industries.
Well, I mean, that would be both. That would be both parties. That would be both parties. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they do. So it's kind of hard. It's like trying to pick a fight, but you want the ref to win.
Right. Well, it's like being a New Orleans Saints fan myself. It's like it's kind of like the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Falcons. Like, who do I root for or who do I root against? You know. Ultimately ended up rooting against the Falcons, even though I hated Tom Brady. But
Well, me being a Raiders fan, that's kind of like me asking everybody to ignore all the criminality that's going on and just let my people win.
Anyway, so okay, but like, what about the call was going to be awkward? Like, I'm still not necessarily don't feel that it's awkward. I mean, clearly we disagree on issues, but you know.
Well, I mean, when you see liberal Dan, most people don't like. Listen, I've been on the Trump side for quite a long time. I like Ron DeSantis a lot.
Like, what about? I mean, is it just because DeSantis pushes back against Biden? Like, you know, DeSantis. I mean, Florida's had some serious problems when it comes to COVID, and DeSantis, I think, has been a little bit of a hypocrite when it comes to, you know.
They have no problems when it comes to COVID.
Really?
They have the lowest mortality rate in the entire country.
I mean, they're one of the higher spikes right now of COVID, and
a couple people got the sniffles.
Not more than just a couple of people. Let's see, COVID.
Well, it's just the sniffles, dude. I mean, I've had it twice, and now the Omicron is not bad at all. That's the good thing about herd immunity, natural immunity, is that when a virus mutates, it becomes less effective. It wears down.
But see, were you listening the entire show? Because that's not always the case. There are viruses that do mutate and become more deadly.
Not Omicron.
Well, I mean, maybe not Omicron, but you know, we still don't know what there has been a death from Omicron, so it's not completely not deadly. However, okay, there's been at least a death that's been reported. We don't know if there will be more or not. But generally speaking, like, you know, just because something is less deadly doesn't mean that it won't kill more people, because if it's more contagious than it is, if its increased contagiousness is more than the decrease in deadliness, then it could then kill more people. I mean, do you agree with that idea?
No, I don't. I believe that it can get more people the sniffles and slightly sick.
I'm not talking about Omicron. I'm just talking about
deadly.
viruses in general. If you have a virus that's 3 times as contagious as the previous virus, as the previous variant, and half as deadly, do you not think more people are going to die?
No.
But the math says that it will.
It's getting similar to the common cold.
Okay, I'm talking generally here. I'm talking generally speaking. I'm not talking about Omicron. I'm talking generally speaking. If a virus is 3 times as contagious and half as deadly than the previous variant, do you think more people will die? You still don't think more people will die if 3 times as more?
Mathematically, if you want to put it that way, yes, I would have to say yes, just to not sound ignorant.
Okay.
So yeah, but those aren't the actual numbers. It's 3 times more contagious and 100 times less deadly, and you won't say that though.
But
you're saying half as deadly.
But I'm saying as a general talking about a virus. I don't think we know enough about the Omicron to know specifically how deadly it's going to be.
We don't know anything about the Omicron, because I know that people are getting testing positive for Omicron, which, even though there is no actual test for the variant.
Well, you know,
right now they're still running the original test. They're still not running they still haven't figured out the Delta variant test. They're still testing just for coronavirus.
Well, they're testing for COVID. When they test you for COVID, you say, "Hey, you have COVID," and then then they send those to the labs, and the labs can determine via those genetic markers that and say, "Okay, this virus in the lab now." So they're not going to tell you have Omicron or not, but they're going to say, "Look, there are more cases of Omicron being found in these tests because we're comparing the genetic sequencing of this virus that we tested to the variant that was found."
But they still haven't caught up on the Delta variant yet. So they're just saying that you have this yet. There's still no actual diagnosis for the Delta yet.
Well, there's no diagnosis for the individual, but you can still track it in the lab. Like, you can still track how many tests are coming back when you send them in to the lab. Like, your test comes back, like you get a rapid test. It says, okay,
So
you have
the
COVID.
The Omicron's coming back high.
It's the highest spreading one at the moment. Yes.
Really, because you can't get tested for it, so you don't know what anybody has. Because now I can still test positive for. I had COVID twice. I had it in March of 2020, and I had it in April of 2021. And there's no way to tell the difference between the two.
If in the individual, there's a difference between the individual tests and then the people that bring it back to like the labs and do more studying on the genomes, because they can do that. Like there's two different things.
Oh, really?
There's me getting the swab and me being told I have COVID. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be Delta or Alpha or Omicron or whatever. But then you send that sample back to, the CDC or wherever it goes, and then they look and they do the genetic sequencing and say, so these amount of tests that have come back, these are showing the genetic sequence that matches the Omicron variant, so therefore this is the Omicron versus the Delta. So they can determine how many of these tests are coming back as Omicron. Not they're just not telling. They're just not breaking it down at the micro level to the individuals. Like you can't test for an individual and say you have Omicron, you have Delta, but they still can determine it in the lab when they get all the samples in. They can start running tests on all of those samples and say, okay, these tests are 50% of these tests are Omicron, X% are Delta, X% or whatever. That's how it works.
Yeah, well, the CDC even said that they can't differentiate between the two variants.
Do you have a link for that?
So, yeah, absolutely. I can easily send it to you. Yeah, they don't have it. It's not a real thing. I mean, it sucks. Listen, I think everybody should protect themselves. I'm not one of these people who thinks, oh, this is all fake. This is all horse shit. Pardon my French.
That's fine. Just a little bit of cursing is okay, not too much, but
Yeah, but I don't. I'm not going to trust people who say we don't know. They don't know what it is. There's no way that they can know what it is, and they've admitted they don't know what it is. They just know that there's a new variant because they found out of South Africa, and they had 12 deaths in the UK, and we're going to call it the Omicron. This is a new variant. It's different because what it's doing is it's beating the pharmaceutical companies. It's beating their vaccine. It's beating their boosters. So they have to rename it. I'm sorry, it's the same thing.
I mean, they're all COVID, but you can have variants of a virus. I mean, it happens. It's not. That doesn't mean that they're being false because.
So when do the boosters stop? When the Greek alphabet runs out?
I mean, when do you stop taking flu shots? I mean, I don't know. You might not take flu shots. I don't know.
I will not take a flu shot. Well, first of all, I'm allergic to the egg that's in flu shots.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm but as somebody who's allergic to the albumin or whatever in the flu shots, you should be hoping that more people around you, do get the vaccine, do get the flu shots because that would help protect you.
I could care less, and I would figure that's something that we can agree on both sides of the aisle, that we don't trust big corporations. I thought that was one of the great things on the left, is that you don't trust big corporations.
Oh no, I don't trust them at all. I don't trust.
Are made by big corporations, dude.
They are, but there's big corporations also produce food, and I'm not going to not eat food because a big corporation has made it. I mean,
well, listen, I love big corporations too. They make tires and they put them in my cars. They're fantastic people.
Right, but big corporations, I don't trust big corporations, which is why I believe that we need, regulations and other sorts of rules to make sure that you try and prevent as much harm ahead of time, versus because there are, as has been shown many times, businesses couldn't care less about, the damage that they cause, because the CEOs of those companies could just, use their golden parachutes. They're already rich, so they don't need to worry about it. And they have this barrier of the corporation that prevents most of them from seeing any lick of damages from the harm that they do. Sometimes you're able to pierce through that corporate barrier that, you know, if they act significantly scummy enough, but most other times you end up having situations where, you know, they do horrible things, they poison the environment, they, you know, kill people, and then the CEO gets to, you know, the big $10 million severance bonus or more and stock, you know, incentives, and they just fly off into the sunset and not caring about who they've harmed. So that's the type of thing, you know, that's, I guess, ultimately my issue with like anarcho-capitalism is that how do those corporations, you know, how do you rein in those corporations in like an anarcho-capitalist society? How do you prevent?
It's very easy. You don't need or purchase their products, and it puts them into a position where they have to do the right thing. So like right now, say with the like there were 3 major vaccine producers.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are only 2.
Well, supposedly there's going to be a third, supposedly.
Yeah, but what happened to the third one, the original one?
The Johnson & Johnson?
What happened?
Or the
Johnson
AstraZeneca?
& Johnson?
Well, Johnson
People were dying.
Right. Well, some people died. Some people had the blood clots.
Myocarditis became a very serious problem.
Yes.
After the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
But the odd thing is myocarditis also took place when people caught COVID. So myocarditis is a symptom of COVID, as well as
but
that.
It's so funny that people that got COVID didn't get any symptoms of myocarditis, nor did they die of myocarditis. People who got the vaccine got myocarditis.
I don't know. I saw reports that there were like college athletes who could no longer participate in sports because they got COVID and then they had myocarditis, so they couldn't compete anymore. So I saw that earlier in the pandemic.
I've never seen that. I'd love to see that, but I don't believe you on that one.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull it up.
It's pretty much just people that have gotten that shot. Now me, I'm just getting boosts. I've never gotten the original vaccine. I'm just getting boosts. I'm only doing it for fun.
Wait, you're only getting the boosts? You're not getting the regular?
Nope, just getting boosters.
Okay.
Everywhere I go. I'm traveling the country. I'm getting boosters everywhere I go.
Wait, so you're getting more
just
shots?
So just shots every day. Who cares?
I don't think you're being serious at that point.
Of course I'm not being serious.
Right.
Facetious.
Okay. But I mean, now I actually took part in the Novavax trial. So, you know, and Novavax has shown to be very successful. They just have some manufacturing issues is trying to get it out there. But, you know, I'm actually going to get boosted on that in January. January 5th is my date of getting boosted. But, you know, that was my choice to participate in the trial. But so that's what I'm thinking, that hopefully you'll have a third one coming around the corner, and that one's not even an mRNA one. That one's a different technology. See, according to Cardiology Advisor, adding to the growing list of multi-system effects of coronavirus disease infection, a significant number of cases post-COVID-19 myocarditis has been reported. According to a 2020 review, approximately 5 to 25% hospitalized with COVID-19 had evidence of myocardial industry. This may pose an especially high risk to competitive athletes in whom myocarditis is a top cause of sudden death. In light of the development of Big Ten conferences now requiring comprehensive cardiac testing for student athletes before they can return to play after having a COVID-19 infection. So,
yeah, okay, all right. So it's all right. So I guess I'm 100% wrong.
I'm not saying you're wrong that it also happens from the vaccines. I'm just saying that it's that a lot of the people that are complaining about that are bringing up myocarditis from a vaccine were never worried about the myocarditis when it was happening because of people getting it from COVID.
Well, I'll tell you this: there's nobody. There's it's not nobody, but it's so close to almost nobody of people getting COVID and dying of myocarditis. It's people getting the vaccine and dying of myocarditis.
Well, how many people have died from the vaccine and myocarditis?
I'd have to look it up. Probably, I don't know, 100,000.
Let's see. Myocarditis deaths vaccines. I found one article about one guy.
There's that woman that ran that hospital. What was that, Florida? Where she said everybody that we give the shot to is everybody that gets the vaccine is getting myocarditis. Like, everybody's getting it. And then she got fucking fired, and pardon my French, she got fired and had to go on stupid Fox News to defend herself because she lost her career over saying, listen, everybody we give this shot to is getting myocarditis. They're getting it like nonstop. She's like, I'm not giving it anymore. Nobody talks about that lady, that poor lady.
Well, I mean, but if she says everybody, and it's not necessarily everybody. Let's see. Although rare, acute myocarditis can also occur after vaccination, such as with the vaccine against smallpox, or more recently, vaccines against COVID-19. Blah, 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 blah. The risks of acute myocarditis associated with SARS infection and after COVID vaccination has gotten intense social media attention. Blah, 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 blah. Let's... trying to see before the emergency.
Right, well, I mean, that's not her website, is it?
No, it's not her website. I'm just it's nature.com, which is
she's a registered nurse. She was on video saying, I'm not giving this thing anymore because everybody I give this thing to is getting myocarditis. It's getting bad.
Okay, the incidence of COVID-19 associated cardiac injury or myocarditis is estimated to be 100 times higher, 1,000 to 1,400 per 100,000 people with COVID-19, than that of COVID-19 mRNA vaccine-related myocarditis. Furthermore, in contrast to the overall mild presentation with good outcome of vaccine-associated myocarditis, COVID-19 is associated with major risk of cardiovascular complications. Among patients with COVID-19, 10% of outpatients and 40% of hospitalized patients had significant myocardial injury, mostly in the absence of clinically significant coronary heart disease. Let's go to the what's this article 7? Let's open that one up.
Which let what this woman saw, we just let it go fall by the wayside, right?
Okay, well, I mean, it's possible that, like, you could see, like, maybe she just happened to see you could have dumb luck and see a bunch of myocarditis. That doesn't mean, like, anecdotal evidence isn't proof.
She quit her career because she saw it firsthand. You got to give her that. She quit her career because she saw it firsthand. It's a problem.
Do you remember her name?
Now, whether it is or whether it isn't, how about this? I'm never getting the vaccine. I'm never getting a booster. Why am I a bad person because of that?
Well, I mean, are you allergic to those just like you would be allergic to the flu?
I assume so, but I'm not gonna risk it.
I mean, well, here's the thing: it's like I'm not gonna criticize anybody who cannot take the vaccine because of a doctor's advice for not taking the vaccine.
Well, let's pretend I'm not allergic to it.
But if you're not allergic to it, look, I'm never going to be the one that advocates to hold you down and force a shot in your arm. I'm not gonna support that. There's other people who might. I don't necessarily support that. However, the data has shown that when you're less likely to catch it if you're vaccinated. If you do catch it, you're less likely to have serious injury or hospitalization. And even if you do happen to be one who does get hospitalized, you're less likely to die. Does that mean you're not going to die? No. Does that mean you're not going to be severely hospitalized? No. But you're just less likely to have those things happen to you. And if you're less likely to get it, you're less likely to spread it. You can still spread it, but you're less likely to spread it if you're less likely to get it. From what I've seen, the duration of the infections, if you're vaccinated, are shorter than the durations without the vaccine. I'm not even going to say without the vaccine. I'm going to say without having previous, having the antibodies. So, there's the Israeli study that says that if you have it, that you have protection, at least for a little bit, But that same Israeli study also says that if you've had it and then get boosted, you will have even more protection than if you don't. So according even to that study, which many conservatives like to talk about, you're always better off on the whole getting the vaccine than not. Furthermore, even if you weren't any less likely to, even if you you didn't want to take that risk for yourself, let's say, okay, you want to try and, get herd immunity, if you will, which, you say you had it twice. So if you had it twice, then that means that your first infection didn't protect you from your second infection. But here's the thing.
Doesn't matter. I was only sick for about 3 days total.
Okay. I think I caught it in January of 2020 before they even had tests. Because my doctor told me that I had
you were in before it was cool.
Yes, I'm a hipster when it comes to COVID. But the other thing is that you have also the situation. If you can't get the vaccine, or even if you're refusing to get the vaccine, there's still other things you can do to prevent spread if you choose to do those things. And a lot of the people that tend to be against the vaccine are also against things like masking and social distancing and stuff like that. And what all of these people do, and if you were like, look, I'm not going to take a vaccine, but I'm also going to stay home when I can. I'm going to mask, going to be socially distanced. I'm not going to be otherwise irresponsible during a pandemic. But the people that tend to be anti-vaccine also tend to be anti-mask, anti-social distancing. They want to just get everything back to normal and do all of these events that are going to cause the virus to spread even more. And if you're going to have more people getting sick, you're going to get more hospitalizations, which is going to put yes, Omicron is big right now and might have less hospitalizations, but there's still Delta out there, and people with Delta are still going to the hospital, and if you swarm the hospitals, that means that the people who would otherwise need the hospitals for other symptoms that are not COVID related, they can't get the treatment that they need because the hospitals are overrun with people who have COVID patients. I remember when we evacuated from Hurricane Ida. I remember this specifically. When we evacuated from Hurricane Ida and we went from Louisiana to Georgia. When we drove through Alabama at the time had -11 available ICU beds. And the reason it's -11 ICU beds is because they were using 11 non-ICU beds as... What?
I let you go for
well, it's my show, but go ahead.
You got to be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why there's a hospital issue right now is because of not shortages of beds, because there are no shortages of beds. They haven't been a shortage of beds since last summer. The problems with the hospital right now is shortage of medical personnel because they're firing everybody for not getting the vaccine. And that's when medical personnel refuses to get the vaccine, that's an issue. When people that work in the medical industry go, hell no, I ain't putting that thing in my body, and you lose 700,000 medical personnel in a matter of a month, I'm sorry, that's an issue.
Well, when we were evacuating for Ida, that was not at the point yet where they were firing people for not having the vaccine.
I'm not talking about Ida, dude.
What? No, I know you're not talking about Ida. I'm talking about the time frame when that happened. During that time, because I remember it. That's why I remember it so succinctly in my head, is because of the fact that we were traveling through Alabama when Alabama had -11 beds, and Alabama had -11 ICU beds not because of the shortage, because of
the bed availability right now has nothing to do with Ida.
I'm not saying, but I'm
has to do with people quitting because they don't want to get the jab, dude.
But there's a limited amount of hospital beds in this country.
Don't want to get it.
There's a limited.
What's that?
There's a limited amount of hospital beds in this country. So yeah, there might be some people in the medical field who might, say, okay, I'm not taking this jab or whatever. There's many, many more who do. These are like the outliers. These are like the,
That's not true.
Do you have any evidence to back that up?
Oh yeah, we can go to the hospital right now in New Jersey right now. There's beds open nonstop. Nothing but beds.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that there won't be beds that are full at some point with another surge, with another issue. That's the thing, is that the more people who get sick,
the surge is going to happen. Because Florida, if you want to go by public gatherings, by people with no masks, no vaccines, no social distancing, Florida is the number one because they were the first state to put sports back in full sports arenas. 18,000 people at UFC events, and they still have the lowest rates of COVID. Still have the lowest rates. Why is that?
Let's see. Latest map and current case count. We're gonna pull that up by state.
Florida's got the lowest.
COVID infection
per capita, yes.
Rates by state. Infection rates. So let's see. States ranked by COVID-19 test positivity rate. Ugh. Paywall. Stupid paywalls.
What happened? Watch the video.
No, it's not even a video. It's just
you have to pay to find out who's got COVID.
It was on a particular, like, it wasn't on a normal site. I thought I was clicking on a normal site that I would click on, but it wasn't. Let's see. Allow all. Expand.
Well, according to the CDC, Florida has the lowest infection rate in the country.
Rate of coronavirus cases in the United States as of December 16th, 2021 by state. Florida is 17th on this, but I don't think that's current.
Not bad for a state that's literally open.
But I think that's overall. So let's go ahead and see, because North Dakota is number one. Red state, Alaska, red state, Tennessee, red state, Wyoming, red state, South Dakota, red state.
There's 17 people in North Dakota, and I know 9 of them.
COVID.
And by the way, I'm moving to Tennessee next year.
What, getting away from New Jersey, or?
Oh yeah, I just want to go someplace where I can just fucking shoot my guns out in the streets like a maniac.
Well, that's Chicago, right?
Well, no, I'm white.
Ha ha. 7-day COVID.
I do appreciate your putting down Chicago. Thank you for that.
I mean, it's often brought up by conservatives, so there we go.
No, it's a horrible place. I don't want any place to be that bad. I want every place to be great. I'm not one of those guys who just goes, oh, well, the cities are the worst and the states are the worst. No, I think we should everybody as an American should have the same free right to have a possibility for advancement. And unfortunately, you don't get it in certain neighborhoods.
And there are many reasons why.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah, that would be like we would have to do a 19-hour show on that one.
Probably. And I'm sure we disagree on a bunch.
But we probably would agree on a bunch too. 'Cause
It's possible that we would.
I'm not
I've had people. I mean, that's total.
I'm not a rock hard conservative, dude.
I'm not.
I'm a libertarian.
Hey,
as much as
I've said on this show many times that I support law-abiding citizens owning guns. I just, think that there should be, universal background checks as well to make sure that they're not going in the right hands and, get rid of the, private sale loophole. But,
Well, that's yeah. I agree that once you have a pistol, it should be your business. God forbid somebody is killed. If I buy a gun in Illinois, in Southern Illinois, and somebody's killed with it in a drug deal in Chicago, that's my problem.
mm-hmm.
That's my gun. I need to be responsible for that. I think the transfer of guns is an issue, but as a libertarian, I believe that I have a Second Amendment right. I don't believe anybody should have. First of all, I'm one of those crazy guys that I don't believe that you should have car insurance.
Why is that?
Whatever, my business.
Okay, so no, you don't think there should be a requirement to have car insurance? You should be able to buy car insurance if you want it.
Yeah, you should. If you're a responsible adult.
And what happens if you get into an accident with somebody who's not insured?
Freedom. Sorry,
but that's the thing, is that the definition that many people have of freedom puts a lot of other people at risk because of their irresponsible actions. So, like,
cost of doing business, bud.
Well, I mean, you could say that, but
90% of liberals want to completely get rid of not only the police but the government.
I don't believe that's correct. I know that there are people who's. I mean, are you trying to cite the people who say defund the police as people who want to eliminate police?
No, I know people that want to abolish. I know people from Antifa personally that want to abolish not only the police and taxation, they want to abolish the entire government.
Well, sure, there are anarchists on the liberal side too. I mean, it happens. Like,
yeah, well, that's where you get the difference between anarcho-capitalist and anarcho-communist.
Right. So I'm sure some y'all have, but there's really not much difference between the two.
Oh, there's a little bit of a difference, like
a little bit.
But as a libertarian, I believe that the police are necessary. I believe they should stay out of our business, and I believe that they should not be literally putting people in jail for unconstitutional laws.
Sure, I agree with that.
I don't believe that our prisons. I'm going to quote Dave Smith right now. Our prisons are flooded right now with nonviolent offenders, and
we can agree that that's a bad thing. Nonviolent offenders.
It's a horrible way to treat. It's a horrible way to treat your people.
But
you have the right. Now, listen. I will never do heroin a day in my life. But as an American, if you want to do heroin, go ahead. I have no problem with you doing heroin. But as a libertarian, I believe we follow what's called a non-confrontational. We believe in non-confrontation. That's it.
Well, non-aggression. The non-aggression principle. Yeah. I'm aware.
Exactly. Non-aggression principle, no confrontation principle. It's the same thing, depending on what caucus you talk to.
Okay.
I have no problem with people doing whatever the hell they want as long as there's no aggression, no confrontation. Don't hurt anybody. Don't take anything that belongs to anybody, and we'll get along swimmingly. The gangs will figure themselves out because they'll run out of money.
The what? The who's will?
The gangs.
Okay.
They'll run out of money very quickly once whatever the hell they're peddling is highly available. And I have no problem. Listen, I don't want people to perish, but if you choose to do heroin, I don't care. Go ahead. None of my beeswax.
Right, but should you be able to choose to do heroin and then like get in a car? Should that be legal? I mean, I know you're an
Yeah.
anarchist. I know you're an anarchist, so maybe as an anarchist, should there be any law? I guess there would be no laws as an anarchist, right?
Well, do I have laws to defend myself against people like that, or can I just make enough money to move away from where people are doing heroin? I mean, that's not a.
So the
not a
people
hard
who
thing to
people
do.
who
Get
can't
the hell out of the area.
so the people who can't afford to move away from the people who are doing heroin are at that point more at risk.
Oh no, they could. Well, they'd figure it out.
That's the
It's
thing.
called free
That's my
will.
problem. That's my issue with laissez-faire policies.
So you want to do is protect the weak.
I think everybody should be protected. I mean, I think that there is a role for government, and the role for government is protecting people from other people or entities, even protecting other entities from people or entities. You know,
So you take away free will. Now I do believe in the protection. This is where I can't stand. I can't stand on this mountain and scream at you because I'm probably wrong on about 5 things.
okay,
I do believe that there has to be some way to protect the people.
okay.
But we have to be able to protect the freedoms as well.
Right, but let's bring it back to COVID-19. So, do you have the freedom?
Okay.
Do you have the freedom to take an action that puts other people at risk from getting sick?
How so?
Okay, let's say you know you have COVID, right? Let's just say you know you have COVID. Should you have the right? And since we don't know what variant it might be, you know, could be Delta, could be Alpha, could be whatever, Omicron, could be whatever it is. Should you believe that you should have the freedom to just go into work as normal, not wear a mask, not socially distance, go grocery storing? You shouldn't have the freedom to do that.
If you have the common cold, don't go to work.
Right, but
Don't get anybody sick.
Right, well, that's the thing. People who care, but the biggest thing I hear from people who are from the right, and I'll and people who might self-describe as libertarian, who might self-describe as conservatives. Now, not all of, many of these people say that my health is my business. Like, it's not their responsibility to make sure that I'm not sick. So,
No, but see, even way before the China flu,
mm-hmm.
I would never go to work sick because I respect my coworkers.
Okay.
So I would wait until I would take my time, and as soon as I was healthy, then I would go back to work. I wouldn't risk them getting sick, whether it was the common cold or the flu or
Right.
mono or gonorrhea or whatever I give out.
I don't know what kind of work that you do that's going to actually spread gonorrhea to other people, but, you know, hey, I'm Liberal Dan Radio is a sex positive podcast, so
I'm very friendly with my coworkers.
that's very, as long as there's consent involved, I don't care. I'm sure you're the same way.
It's all consented. It's mostly videotaped.
Well, that should be consented to as well. But that's the thing. You're saying you personally, you're saying, wait,
for the electric company.
You're saying that you personally would not do that, and it's good. And I would not. I would stay home when I was sick either. But should somebody have?
Like people.
But the thing is that there are people who believe, again, that it's they have the right to take actions that might, you know. Let's say you don't know that you're sick, but you're in the middle of a pandemic. Should you be able to freely do whatever it is that you want, even if you might be passing on something asymptomatically with something that we know can be passed on asymptomatically?
Well, yeah, but the asymptomatic thing has already been proven horse manure.
By whom?
See, I figured out a way not to swear.
I appreciate that, but by whom?
It's Fauci. He proved it. He said it.
When?
He said originally that asymptomatic people can pass the variant, can pass the virus. And then he came out, 3 weeks ago and said, oh, yeah, no, it turns out that no, it's not. That's not how it works. Now it's the problem is the the vaccinated are the problem.
The unvaccinated.
No, the vaccinated. He said the vaccinated are the only ones that have it and don't know they have it. He goes, there's no asymptomatic thing anymore. He said this.
I haven't seen that. liberaldanradio@gmail.com if you want to send me the link, if you feel like it.
Absolutely, but I don't. First of all, he's. I'm going to say this for the purpose of comedy. He's Italian. I wouldn't let an Italian run a garage sale, let alone a pandemic.
Jeez. Wow. Hold on. I'm going to have to put you on hold for a second. You're more than welcome to stay on, but I do have another caller on the line. So let me go ahead and get to that
Sure.
caller. And if you want to, I'll come back to you if you stay on the line.
You got it.
All right. We have another caller on the line. Who dis be?
Yes, good evening, sir. My name is Mike. How you doing?
Hi, Mike. How are you? Where are you from?
Minnesota.
Welcome. Thank you for calling into the show. What do you have to say on COVID and all the other stuff we've been talking about that's completely off topic, but I don't care because it's fine.
Yeah, no problem. No, we can get on to the issues with the vaccines. You remember, let's go back maybe about 5-6 months ago, the argument from people who were ever advocating for vaccine mandates or were pushing this notion that everyone had to be vaccinated. Remember, the argument they used to make was those who are unvaccinated are a risk to other people, right? Because you can give other people COVID. Remember that?
Right.
Right. So now we know that whole thing has pretty much been blown out the water because we've got a ton of fully vaccinated people that are getting COVID and passing to other people. And so when it comes to this, I always wonder when people who advocate for vaccines or act like people who aren't vaccinated are a risk to them, isn't the vaccine there supposed to protect you from being hospitalized or dying from COVID? Isn't that the whole point of it?
Yeah, the vaccine makes it less likely for people to be hospitalized. The vaccine makes it less likely for people to die. I think that's still true. But like up until 3 weeks ago, my youngest wasn't fully vaccinated. So even though I was fully vaccinated, and even though my wife was fully vaccinated, even though my oldest child was fully vaccinated, my youngest was still not fully vaccinated. So I'm going to sit here and
if you don't mind me asking, how old is your youngest?
My youngest is 8. So he finally did, as soon as he was eligible. First day we got him his first shot, but still first shot doesn't mean fully vaccinated. Five weeks from that point, it was when he would become fully vaccinated, which was 2 weeks ago, I think.
Okay.
But until
I got a question to ask you though.
Okay.
Before we get further down that, because I just want to get a general understanding of how you view this, because this is coming from a poll that Gallup put out about a month ago.
Okay.
And it has to do with the issue of how people viewed COVID. So I'll ask you a question. What percentage of people do you think that once they've gotten COVID need to be hospitalized? What's the percentage in your mind you think that is?
Hospitalized is, I would probably say
that require hospitalization once they get COVID.
I would say probably no more than 5%.
Okay, that's correct. Now, what's the percentage of people that die from COVID in general across all ages?
It's 1 to 2%.
Actually, well, it's less than 1%. It's under 60. But now, when it comes to what is the average age of death of someone from COVID?
The average age of death is probably somewhere, close to 50, 55?
It's 76.
Okay, fine. But still.
Okay, now specifically to your child, now we're just going to shift to your child there. Now, what is the percentage of children, we're talking about under the age of 12, let's just use that age group, that are hospitalized from COVID?
It's very small, but it got a little bigger with Delta.
Okay, now what is the percentage of children that die? Well, I'll even make it flip. Let's say, what's the survival rate from COVID for children under the age of 12? You know that exact number?
I don't know the exact number. It's probably over 99% survival rate, but
yeah, it's 99.998. So
okay.
It's almost 100%.
Yeah.
Now the hospitalizations is like we're talking about 99.9, I think 7 or 99.96. So the likelihood that your child, unless a doctor specifically told you they're immunocompromised or they have a specific health condition that puts them at risk from COVID, the chance of your child being hospitalized from COVID is almost nothing. It's less than it is for the flu. And even now, and I'd ask you, have you looked at any of the risks to your child from the actual vaccine? In like the case of myocarditis, the issues of blood clots, have you studied that at all?
Well, we talked about that earlier on the show, where the risks of the risk of myocarditis that come from COVID infection are about 100 times or more worse than the risks of getting myocarditis from the vaccine. And those cases of myocarditis from the infection are much more harmful than the ones that usually happen from the vaccine, which many times just pass after a while. So
yeah, well, you're referring to adults. I'm talking about for children. The study you're citing have to do with adults.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to children, what the rates of children who get myocarditis from COVID is almost nothing. It barely even registers. Now, what are the numbers when it comes to children getting myocarditis from the vaccine? Have you looked at any of that?
I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Okay, so did you weigh it all in your mind before you decided to get your child vaccinated? Just ask yourself, is my child more at risk from suffering some type of adverse reaction from COVID, whether it be hospitalization or worse, versus them potentially getting an adverse reaction to the vaccine? Have you ever asked yourself which one is a higher risk for my child before you did that?
Well, I did several things that we had to take into consideration when it came to that. Is not just the any potential harm that might come from a vaccine versus any potential harm, and I'm thinking more of I'm sort of a worst case scenario type person as compared to I'm worried more a lot about the worst case scenario. I do have a situation that also my wife is immunocompromised. And as such, there's not much information on how much even she's protected, even when she has the booster. Now, the booster does help her with more protection, but there's many things we have to take into consideration as our family as a whole to make sure that everybody in our family is protected. And so we felt that doing that was the best for my child. And in Louisiana, I know there's been 0 deaths when it comes from the vaccines, and there has been deaths of children and deaths of adults when it comes to COVID-19. So,
do you think that maybe the reporting of adverse reactions when it comes to the vaccines have been somewhat underreported for obvious reasons? Do you think that could be a possibility or not even possible?
I think that anything is possible. I don't know how probable it is.
Well, if you include the fact that there's a massive financial incentive, and this ties into the issue of vaccinating the whole population as a whole, or trying to get 80 to 90% vaccination, which is, I think the reality when you look at the studies, the people that are at risk are people over the age of 60, people that are immunocompromised, or people that have certain, health conditions, whether it's diabetes or so forth, that actually need to be vaccinated. And that the majority of the U.S. population does not need to be. Unless, of course, you're Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson or any one of these companies that stand to make a mountain of money off of this whole thing, which they have, and want to and have, boosters mandatory every year, which the Moderna CEO's already come out and said, which is they're going to be their primary revenue generating model for their company, which is what he stated to the stakeholders. Did you think at all that maybe this idea of needing to even vaccinate children is all financial and less about people's health?
No, I don't believe that that's the case. I mean, I understand if you do.
Okay, so
and that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, yes. People that make vaccines and people who make medicines are going to do better in situations of where you need their product as where you don't need their product, or you might not agree that the products are needed, obviously, because you said that you don't believe that most adult Americans under 60 or whatever, or children, need the vaccine. I mean, I think I'm representing you correctly. If I'm not, you can correct me.
Yes, sir. No, you're good.
Okay. So, because I try and be fair to people to call in the show, especially those who are, disagreeing with what's going on. Now, so do you? So yeah, there's a lot of people who are older, who especially in the beginning, were from COVID, were the ones who died. Now, do we believe that? But we have seen that other people besides old people have died, right? I mean, and some of those people were you would look at them and consider them to be relatively healthy, and not having, other types of comorbidities that might cause somebody to be more susceptible to a virus. But
well, not quite. No, that's not true. I mean, the CDC put out a study demonstrating the fact that it's north of 80% of almost all COVID deaths are people that have at least 4 or more comorbidities. And that they've already stated, and I can get you the study. I'm on the road right now, but they put out a study stating that only 5% of COVID deaths have they confirmed that were directly deaths from COVID. Almost every other death is reported with death with COVID, which is obviously, there's a difference between the two.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, I hear a lot of people who are against the vaccines and stuff like that bring that up. It's just like nobody dies of HIV. People usually die because they get pneumonia because their immune system is now compromised because of the HIV. So not many people have on their death certificate died of.
Right. No, I'm not anti-vaccine, by the way. I just want to be clear.
Okay, but
what I'm against is what's been done for financial gain, and why I argue that is the pharmaceutical. Okay. The reason we even have vaccines in the first place is because they were given an emergency use exemption, correct?
Right.
You agree with that? That's
yes.
how we were able to get. Okay. Now, in order to get that exemption, there could not be any therapeutic available for the disease. If there were therapeutics available that would treat the disease, they would not be allowed to get that emergency use exemption, which was going to stop them from making billions of dollars. So what we witnessed was a full-scale pressure to shut down any form of treatment that was available. Because if any kind of treatment was developed and it was shown to work, it would obviously shut down all their profits. So around the world, we saw mass demonization and even outright destruction of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I'm from Africa. In Africa, we literally had mercenaries going into pharmacies and burning the ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. In places like Taipei, where they develop hydroxychloroquine, the plant that's used to make it, for whatever reason, those fields and those places have been completely burned down. I mean, a drug that's been FDA cleared used for malaria and a whole host of other diseases, all of a sudden has been demonized wholesale. For what reason?
Well, I think ivermectin for one has been demonized. I can't speak for other people. Or try not to speak for other people when it comes to the stuff. But my criticism of the people who were taking ivermectin were the people who were going into the, animal supply stores and buying like the ivermectin for the sheep or for the horses or for the other livestock, and taking ivermectin that was made for animals and ingesting that into their body and dying or getting themselves sick.
But we're not talking about that, though. Obviously, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the real ivermectin that you get prescribed from a doctor. Okay, that's what we're talking about. I know people bring up the horse dewormer thing and all that. That's a rabbit trail. We're talking about.
But that's Fauci's
emails. By the way, I want to say this point. It's important to know. Fauci's emails, because we got the FOIA request to actually read his emails. We found from his emails that not only he, but his entire family was taking hydroxychloroquine, not only to treat it, but as a preventative measure for COVID. Okay? So the people who are in the medical field, they know hydroxychloroquine is effective because it targets viral replication, which is a major aspect of how COVID spread. Secondly, another treatment that's out there that's barely being talked about is the primary way you get COVID is if you are in an enclosed space, an indoor place with poor ventilation for more than 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, in that circumstance, you can get that's when the virus can then, usually it incubates in your nose, and it takes a couple of days from that point to then get to the next phase where it's in your lungs and you have a respiratory infection. There are treatments that have shown that if you, for example, let's say you go out tonight and you're in a room, a concert hall, a theater, whatever, for 3 hours, you come back home. If you take, what is that? The medical term, but the it's in the brown bottle. Like I always forget the name, but the anti. When you have a cut or you need to use it for mouthwash. What is that?
Hydrogen peroxide.
It comes in a brown.
Hydrogen peroxide.
Exactly, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that name was. So if you use that and mix it with water and have it go through, like push it through your nose so that it comes down your throat, rinse out your mouth with the same fluid and spit it out. That alone can kill off most of the virus that you have in your nose at the time. But this is not for me. This is a lot of doctors. I cite you to Dr. Peter McCullough, who's an epidemiologist who's looked into this and worked really hard to try to come up with treatment for COVID. And he's shown this really helps. Because his emphasis of what this issue I'm trying to get to is that because these vaccine companies were desperate to get that emergency use exemption, they essentially grounded to a halt all research into treatment. That's why if you go to Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins, you go all the major medical institutions, not one of them have developed the treatment for COVID yet. None of them have. All they even recommend is take remdesivir, but remdesivir gives you kidney and liver failure, which in my opinion leads to why a lot of people die when they get hospitalized. But they have no real treatment that they developed because they had a financial incentive. Remember, these people get grants, they get paid from these pharmaceutical companies and companies underneath them, subsidiaries. That's where they get a lot of their financing from. So there was such a massive financial incentive to make sure that emergency use exemption would stand. They shut down any research in therapeutics, man. That's why they demonized hydroxychloroquine, even though people like Fauci were using it.
Well, two things.
I mean, like, ask yourself for a minute. Don't you think that maybe we wouldn't have had 800,000 people die if we had the same level of investment and focus towards therapeutics that we did for the vaccine?
Two things.
I mean, that's the part that angers me, but go ahead. I apologize.
All right, two things. First, I might even forget my second thing. Darn it. I think isn't Pfizer now coming out with a therapeutic that you can take after getting COVID infection? Isn't it coming out now? Like,
I believe it was Merck, but go ahead.
All right, so that is coming out. Now, according to what I'm looking at right here, there's a Facebook post claims that Fauci knew about hydroxychloroquine's ability to treat people with COVID-19, referencing emails from the health director obtained by BuzzFeed and the Washington Post. The emails do not show him acknowledging its effectiveness. Instead, it shows that he is aware of claims being made by other people about the drug, that he is waiting on the results of a study being conducted on hydroxychloroquine as a possible treatment for COVID-19. The study was eventually halted after researchers concluded the drug offered no additional benefit for treating the virus. We rate the claim false. So I don't know where you got the information. Look.
Go look up that study. First of all, let's talk about that study they're citing. That study that they're citing was put up by a company who, because I'm on the road and I couldn't give the exact name, that actually sponsored the study, and it was posted in the New England Journal for Science. Now, that study was debunked several times by a lot of people. The company that put it out just disappeared. No one knows where it came from. It literally popped up right when that study was made, and it went away the minute that study was published. And there's many people that have challenged and said that company was actually sponsored directly by a whole host of pharmaceutical companies. Because, as I said before, you cannot ignore the fact that they had a massive financial incentive to guarantee they get that emergency use exemption. I mean, think about it for a minute here. Let's put aside whatever you think about the vaccine. I know you're a leftist, so you obviously are skeptical of corporations. I mean, that's fundamental.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely,
right?
100%.
Okay, so
yes,
and you guys know that these people are greedy, and they will be willing to kill anybody to make money. And I agree with that 100%.
Yes.
Now, as think about this for a second, if you're them, if they don't get that emergency use exemption, they're going to miss out on potentially trillions of dollars here. Because if I'm not mistaken, one of them is on the verge of becoming the first ever $1 trillion pharmaceutical company in the history. Now, the amount of money that they were about to lose out on if they don't get that exemption, do you think that they would all have any type of incentive to demonize, whether it be hydroxychloroquine or any treatment, or to shut down any group that was looking to actually develop a therapeutic before they got that exemption? You think there would be any incentive to do that?
Would there be? I mean, sure. Yes, it's possible.
Now, I know, and I promise you, if we had this discussion 20 years ago, before leftists essentially became friends of the state, back when leftists used to be skeptical of the state like they were when Bush was president, in that time period, if this same thing was going down, I guarantee you would be in agreement with me. The only reason you're not is because the left in the last 10 years has completely changed to where you guys are favorable to the CIA all of a sudden, the FBI, the government, the state. You guys are okay with censorship and surveillance, all these things that you guys used to oppose 20 years ago. for reasons that, you know, we can get into if you want to. But the fact of the matter is, you guys accept the government propaganda without questioning it anymore. I don't know what happened to you guys. You didn't used to be this way, but you are.
I think the reason that a lot of liberals
your skepticism of corporations, which was a bedrock of being a leftist, for whatever reason, in this case, you just throw it out the window.
What I would say is that while I'm definitely skeptical, I'm skeptical of both government and of corporations, and I'm still skeptical of them. Like the first Liberal Dan Radio patron, Demonox, who is sick right now with the cold, unfortunately. Otherwise, he'd probably be joining in on this conversation. He shout out to Demonox, by the way, appreciate you. He hates Pfizer with a passion. But he's going to take but he's taking the vaccine, or he took the vaccine because, you know, of the risks of not doing so. Now, does that mean that I would think and I would hope that there would be enough, there should be a motivating factor to wanting for any politician, is to want to get reelected. I mean, that's what every first-term politician wants, is a second term, right? We agree on that, right?
Yeah.
So there should be some sort of incentive for government there to then want to make sure that there is, you know, and I trust liberal politicians more than conservative politicians on the issue of whether or not a business should be regulated or how much oversight a business should have when doing things like creating an emergency vaccine for use in a global pandemic. So I believe that that's probably where you're seeing.
That's not our disagreement. I don't think that's the issue. I'm talking about the fact that each pharmaceutical company blocked the development of therapeutics and was the main engine behind the demonization of anything that could treat people once they have COVID. That's the issue there. And I'm trying to get to see from you that are you okay with the fact that that's exactly what they did? Because if that did not happen, they wouldn't have got that emergency use exemption, and they would not have made the money they did.
And see, the only thing that I could potentially, you know, let's just say, for example, that you have work done on a vaccine that's going to prevent versus, or potentially prevent versus therapeutic that treats after you catch the virus, right? I think there's an incentive.
Yeah, which is more important?
The more important is the prevention. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Of course not. It's the treat is the more important.
No.
Because there's a small percentage of the population that's even at risk of dying or being hospitalized. So once you get that part clear, then you realize, okay, the majority of the population is not at risk. Therefore, we should then focus on the people that are at risk of dying and make sure that once they have COVID, we have a treatment available for them.
No, because every person who catches it, regardless of whether or not they have an adverse reaction to having it, they're still going to potentially pass it on to other people. There's still more vectors of transmission, the more vectors of transmission that you have, the more opportunities you give it to mutate. So,
no, okay, on that part I agree. Like, ideally would be having both things happen at once. For example, develop vaccines and develop therapeutics. I would agree with that 100%. I'm not anti-vaccine again. I know you want me to be that, but I'm not that.
No, I don't want you to be. I want you to be who you are.
I don't want vaccines at the expense of therapeutics. To where, because these companies have that financial incentive, we have to shut down the whole development or any even curiosity into any type of therapeutic to make sure that the vaccines would get the emergency use exemption. That's what my problem is. Because I think the reason that so many people died was because of that, because of the total refusal to actually develop any therapeutics, so that these companies could make their money. That's the part I have an issue with.
I would have to disagree with you on that. In that's the main reason, and that's the main reason why we lost 800,000 people.
Another reason, if we don't have a treatment, for example, when people were dying, what were hospitals doing? They were issuing remdesivir and putting people on ventilation. If you go to a hospital, COVID and you go to the hospital right now, and your doctor is going to tell you, we're going to give you remdesivir and put you on a ventilator, you better run out of that hospital faster than anything you do.
Wait.
If you get that remdesivir, you are going to suffer acute renal failure, kidney failure, liver failure. You're going to die. You're going to go down.
Okay.
I promise you that.
That is a line of reasoning that I don't understand, and here's why. It seems like it's putting, I don't know if cart before the horse is the right analogy or whatever term I'm looking for.
I'm basing it on a CDC study. The CDC even admitted that
but
remdesivir leads to acute kidney and liver failure.
Well, it's more of the whole ventilator thing. It's more the, like, if you're on a ventilator.
Well, the ventilator thing, obviously, is just insanity. They were killing people on those things.
Are they killing people with ventilators, or are the people who are going on ventilators so near death that they're likely to die anyway, but the ventilator gives them a shot to maybe not die? That's the thing. Are they dying because of the ventilators, or are they? It's
the backwards way how they went about treating this. Okay, first of all, let's start from the jump. If you call your doctor right now, let's say you become COVID positive. You call your doctor right now, and what is your doctor going to tell you? If you're not feeling any serious symptoms, he's going to tell you to stay home and just ride it out.
Right.
That's what he's going to tell you. That in itself is a problem, number one. The fact that the medical community has not even come up with any type of treatment for people once they get COVID, which would help, because remember, the hospitalization risk or the death risk isn't immediate. That's after about 7 days. So that first 7 days is the window you have to treat it before the serious conditions kick in. Because remember, the virus first starts in your nose, and then it works its way down into your lungs. And the viral load, if you can deal with it early on, it can reduce the chances of you being hospitalized in the first place, which they don't even treat in the beginning, which they were not allowed to because of the financial incentive by these companies to not develop any type of therapeutic and not put that out in the general public. Why? Because they wanted the public scared, ignorant, and they wanted high deaths. They wanted that because that would guarantee that the governments around the world would buy these vaccines in mass, which they have, would implement mandates, which they have in a lot of countries, and they're trying to here, which would line the pockets of these companies for the most foreseeable future. I'm just telling you, man, you gotta, like.
Let me go ahead.
Growing up, you knew how the world really worked, right? You didn't buy into this naive nonsense about the propaganda we get in the news, whether it be CNN, Fox, doesn't matter. It's mostly propaganda put out by corporate interests and government interests. That their interests have nothing to do with us. It's for their own benefit and gain, whether it's the financial gain of the corporations or the gain of power for the government. That's what they're in it for. They're not in it for you and I. They were in it for you and I. They would have not allowed the stuff that's put in our food to be put in our food. They would not allow the pharmaceutical companies to put the type of stuff in the medications they do. They wouldn't allow doctors to prescribe opioids and get people hooked on that. They've clearly demonstrated by their actions they do not care about us or our health. They're in it for themselves and their power and their money. That's what they're in it for.
Okay, I'm
telling you, in this case, with this pandemic, they did the exact same thing. And I'm telling you, that same skepticism that you would have in any other situation, which would be justified, you didn't because of the wide-scale propaganda done through the media and the left primarily through CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the anti-Trump bias, which has allowed you guys to be clouded in your judgment because you use your emotions. You're not thinking reasonably or objectively here because you can't. I mean, let's be honest. The studies, the data doesn't back up anything you guys are pushing here because the risk is not for COVID, death and hospitalizations is low. There's no need to do all this stuff unless, of course, you're being paid off by these companies and they need you to put this stuff out to the public to mislead the public, scare them to death, convince them they have to be vaccinated or they're going to die, which is what they're doing. I mean, come on, man. Look at the propaganda. How do you not see this?
Okay, I'm going to put you on.
What is going on with the left?
I'm going to put you on mute a second because I want to be able to make my point. I want to take my first commercial break, and then I'll come back to both of y'all maybe after the break. But I do want to say one thing. Liberal Dan Radio is not a very profitable venture for me at this point. There is nobody funding me to put out any sort of propaganda. So I'm more than welcome more people to come in and buy advertising on the show and pay for stuff so I can make this be a successful podcast. Trust me, I wish I could have that. Not necessarily to spread propaganda, but I would love to have more support than I do now. So let's just get that off the table. There is nobody paying me to spread anything. But I still... The idea to me, which is very, it's a bizarre idea to me, and that often is made by people on the right. I often cite Jeff on the Ringside Politics show that I listen to a lot. I often cite him and I'll be like, he talked about the whole ventilator remdesivir thing as well. First of all, Donald Trump, who he loves, I don't know if the callers, first caller did like Donald Trump. He was one of the biggest proponents of remdesivir and ventilators, both. But if you're so sick that you're needing those treatments, like it's the sickness that's killing you. It's not the ventilator that's killing you. I've heard conservatives say before, if a doctor wants to put you on a ventilator, run. Well, if you're not going to get on a ventilator, if you're so sick that you're going to have to get on a ventilator, you're probably going to die if you're not on a ventilator because you're that sick that you need a ventilator. So I don't understand the concept beyond that. Now, as to why I believe that it's an interesting point of conversation to bring up as to whether or not there is incentive for these pharmaceutical companies to squash any potential therapeutic. You had remdesivir, you had the monoclonal antibodies. Those therapeutics were there and being developed, and now you have another therapeutic that is developed as well. That's being put out, that was just announced today, and they've been working on that. Now, I think Merck makes ivermectin. So if ivermectin was a treatment that could be used, that could, help people, instead of having to spend billions of dollars trying to work on something, I would think that Merck would love to be able to just sell their therapeutic for ivermectin if that really worked to help fight COVID-19. Why have to spend billions of dollars to sell something when they could just sell what they already have? Just make it and just sell it out, and then they make a bank with that. So I don't necessarily buy that either. But one of the things that just really the whole, if they didn't do this, we would